Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 78.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have an interview with Kathryn Clowes. And Kat is the first repeat interview that we have. We interviewed Kat on episode 66, so you can go back and listen to some of the preliminary stuff about her book there. But in this episode, Kat and I dive deep, and we talk a lot about what families should be doing as they're visiting colleges and things that they might look at while they're on campus to help them decide which college is a good fit if you're a senior, or perhaps which colleges to visit if you're a junior or sophomore. But we talk about areas that you should delve a little deeper into. We mentioned things like, well, there's the brochure type of information, which all colleges put out there, right? What their class size is and how many students they have and where they're located and all the wonderful statistics about their school. But there's another layer of questions that families should be asking as they're trying to determine what college is a good fit for them. And what those questions should be is all covered in this podcast episode. We also delve into a little bit of LinkedIn and online strategies. So there's a lot of great information. If you need show notes, they're always available at Taming the High Cost of College /78 for this episode. Let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Kat. All right, today we're sitting down with Kathryn Clowes. She's the author of Put College to Work. Welcome, Kat.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're actually having you back. You're, I think, my first returning guest because we had so much to talk about. We didn't get it all done. So welcome back.
Thank you.
And I love your book, by the way, so I highly recommend it. And I guess why don't you tell people, in case they hadn't caught the last episode, a little bit about what you do and why you wrote the book, and then we'll dive into some topics here.
Okay. Well, I'm a educational consultant and career consultant. I help students figure out what they want to be when they grow up and how to get there. And I had noticed a lot of the same questions that students have. And being a millennial myself, I had gone to a really good school and got good grades and went to class. And when I graduated from college, I had this elusive piece of paper that I knew was supposed to make me successful and get me this amazing job, but I didn't know how. And I had noticed that a lot of my peers were the same way because we were just kind of doing what we had been told in high school and in college, is that you get good grades, you go to class, and then you have this degree that's supposed to make you successful, but we didn't know how to use it. And so spent a lot of time soul searching, and I discovered that I could help students not do what I did, which is soul searching for a couple years after college. And so I wrote the book as a manual to help students use their 4 years to their advantage. They're paying a lot of money for college in tuition dollars, and I really wanted to give them a how-to on not just going to class and getting good grades, but all the other things that they should be doing to get ahead so that by the time they graduate, they have this amazing job that they're excited about and they love. And so it's a how-to manual on exactly how to do that. Networking, how to utilize all the resources at your school, how to build your resume, your presence online, your presence in the community. I really wanted to try to teach students, not to do it the way that my friends and I did it.
Right. And exactly. And I think this is, I guess, one of the important things that for most parents out there, you just kind of stumbled through college, the whole process, right? You decided, hey, I think I'm going to college. And then you visited a local school or two and you randomly picked one. And it all just kind of happened one step after the other with no forethought of really the whole process. What your book does for families is it says, hey, if you do something with intention, if you figure out where you're trying to go, the steps become clearer and you can actually do it better with the end in mind, so to speak. Obviously, Stephen Covey there, but
that's exactly right. My dad and I, we looked through all the college brochures. I had applied to the schools that I'd heard of. So some big famous schools and then some schools that family members had went to. And I, at the time, thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I'm obviously not a veterinarian now, so that didn't work out. But I looked at all the top rated vet schools and applied there. And when it was time to decide on schools, it was at that point, I decided I didn't want to be a veterinarian. And so it was just kind of, well, which one feels good, I guess. And so I fell into it a little bit more. I was able to visit and fell in love with Santa Clara, which is the school that I ended up picking, and was really happy there. But I had no idea really what I was doing up there other than going to college. And so, like a lot of my classmates, I graduated with this magical piece of paper and had no idea what I was doing with it, which was unfortunate because I'd spent so much money on it. And all the things now that I wish I would have known, I could have had this amazing career just right out of school, started out strong, confident, great earning potential. And it took a lot of time to get to that point, which I don't regret because I learned a lot along the way, but it's not the ideal path for students.
Absolutely. And to give you another example, myself and my friends, I have an engineering degree, and I think most of us ended up, and again, I changed careers, obviously, because I do a lot of college planning now, but I think a lot of my peers ended up specializing in wherever they got their first job. So if an auto company offered, made a good offer coming out of college, you now are in the auto industry. And once you get a little bit of experience, it's hard to get, change industries without doing something on purpose. I don't know that people went into engineering saying, I want to work in the auto industry. I'm sure some did, but I think for a lot of people, myself included, I ended up in an industry that I really didn't care much about, but it was the company that offered me a job out of college. I kind of realized, and that's part of the reason I'm no longer practicing engineering, is I decided that it wasn't a good fit for what I wanted to be doing with my life and changed. But had I known a little bit going in, as far as what direction I wanted to go, I think that could have made a big difference. And I see that a lot with many families.
As do I. And I think it's hard too, because when you just graduate or you're getting that first job, it is a little bit, if you're not planning, whoever will hire me because I need a job. And once you get, that paycheck going and hopefully you have benefits, then it gets really hard to change over if you find another interest. And there's a lot more, I think, personal risk involved. Not necessarily. I think it's a mental hurdle to switch over, but then it's also really difficult if you haven't built up your network and if you're not building an expertise on the side. So you really kind of have to be more entrepreneurial about yourself and your choices, which you should be anyway, but it's a lot harder once you have that first job and you haven't been planning this whole time what your move is. And I see that with a lot of students, a lot of student engineers as well. When they choose the engineering major, my first question is always, why do you want to go into engineering? Because it's a hot major right now, because you have it's a clear-cut career path. And I have a lot of students that say, well, because I can make a lot of money doing it. So then I start asking questions, do you like building things? Do you like math? Do you like creating things? And a lot of times they're like, oh no, I hate my math class and I don't like my science classes. And so they pick that major because it's a guaranteed career, but that might not be the right fit for them. And I've seen that a lot, and I have a lot of, you hear it a lot in circles that, STEM, 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 but STEM isn't right for everybody. There's other opportunities. I work for a utility company as a project manager with a lot of engineers. And as a more of a theater kid personality, they didn't really quite know what to do with me. But when I was working with customers, that's when my theater personality came in, because I could keep everybody smiling and entertained. And so there's a lot of different opportunities. And I think that's another thing the students don't know, the breadth of careers out there available to them.
Absolutely. So I guess in your book, one of the things you talk about, there's a whole chapter on what we call personal branding. So can you explain what that is? And then we'll kind of apply that to college.
Sure. So personal branding is, if you were in business school, or by definition, it's whatever people think of your brand or you or your company when you're not in the room. And that's kind of the easiest way to explain it. When you think of Coca-Cola, you have maybe Coca-Cola Red in your mind, or the taste or of the soda, or the soda itself, or maybe you see some of the Coca-Cola signs, etc. The logo. When you think Target, usually the first thing that comes to mind is their logo or their color or the feel in their stores, or if you're like me, the fact that you go in for one thing and you end up with an entire cart full of things.
Hmm.
With a person, it's what people think of you professionally. So if you were to come in the room and talk to a few people and then leave, what impression did you leave with them? Oh wow, that Kat, she's a hard worker, or she's really smart, or I'm kind of talking myself up here, but
Yeah,
using myself
absolutely.
as an example. Um, but then there's negative branding too. Oh man, that Kat, she never dresses well and she's always late, or she's negative, or there's a you're kind of on stage whenever you're around people, especially in a professional field.
Right.
And so with students, it's really important for them to identify what their personal brand is right now and what they want it to be. So if, and the best way that I have an example in the book, is to email 10 family members and friends and ask them two positive things that they think about you and a negative thing. And I actually did this exercise myself to try it out. And I found that my friends had said, "Well, you're always a few minutes late to things." And at first I was affronted because I was like, "Well, I'm just really busy." But then I realized that yes, I am a few minutes late to things. And so that helped me better plan, because I didn't want my brand to say that I was always going to be late. I was going to be the latecomer to everything.
Mhm.
But then there were some positive things that I didn't realize that people thought about me when I came into the room. So with your personal brand, especially for where you want to go in your career and in college, you need to start building that now. And that brand does relate to the college that you're going to choose, because there's this feeling when you go on campus. There's a mission that the school's trying to communicate. You're with students that share similar values, and they're shaping you as a person, and part of that shaping is your personal brand. And so that's why it's important to identify that as soon as you can, and then what you want people to think about you, what kind of person you do want to be, and then matching the school to that and matching your career to that.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at it again with the end in mind, most employers are not looking for a mechanical engineering major. They're not looking for a nursing major. They're not looking for an economics major. They're looking for someone to take on this role and solve these problems and take care of those customers or whatever it might be. They want confidence that you're able to, again, solve the problems, think on your feet, and be able to, and contribute and help in whatever situation they have. And if your majors line up, I think they certainly look at your major and say, well, based on this major, they're strong in math and science, so they can handle this type of job. But again, they want more than that. Most graduates graduate with a class, and there's, you've got 25 of your peers that are also potentially interviewing for that exact same job. You all have the piece of paper. So now what's your brand, and how is that going to plug you in? And if you're, 16, 17 and looking at college, you may not have that very well defined yet. And it could very well change. You change career choices or majors or whatever it is. But I guess I look at my son as an example, and he's relatively young. He's only 13, but he is obviously going to get involved in STEM and technology, and he loves working on computers and doing all stuff, the typical, strong in math, etc. So I guess the personal brand I'm thinking about for him is, well, what industry are you thinking you're interested in? Because engineering is very broad, and there's engineers all over the place, from sales all the way down to technical design to et cetera, et cetera. And engineering is not the goal, in my opinion. It's, I'm going to be in the defense industry, or I'd like to be in the software industry or the gaming industry or the whatever. Would that be an appropriate application of what we're talking about, in your opinion?
Yes. And I think that you're exactly right. If we can get students thinking more ahead and the person that they want to be, one of the things that you pointed out is that students don't realize that once you graduate, everybody has the same piece of paper. And I think that was the biggest mistake that my friends and I made, is that we thought this piece of paper was magical. And I remember my first job interview with a big corporation, and they looked at my resume, and I'm sitting there nervous. And the interviewer, he said, "Oh, good. You went to Santa Clara." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, what else have you done?" And luckily, I had taken a couple on campus jobs. I had been a working student in the summers, and I had more to talk about. But I'll never forget how shocked and affronted I was that 4 years of my life just got, 5 seconds of time. And that
Mhm.
was it. And it got wiped away. And the next question was, "Well, what else have you done?" And of course, in my mind, I'm going, "Well, what do you mean, what else have I done? I took, 21 units and I got straight A's, and I took all the classes to build my mind, and I was a classics minor." And, in my mind, I had spent 4 years teaching myself and learning. And in the career field, I had my piece of paper. I had completed my degree, and there was a lot more to me. Some of the CEOs and hiring people, hiring committees that I have talked to have emphasized that the person that they're hiring isn't necessarily the person who is the smartest guy in the room or the smartest girl in the room. It's the person that they can rely on that's part of their team. It's somebody they can talk to. A particular CEO that does a lot of hiring was talking about how he has a 3-step interviewing process. And his interview questions include things like, what's your favorite comic in the paper? And what do you think about the current situation overseas? Just to see if students can have a conversation. And I've heard that from a lot of admissions officers as well, is they're looking to see not necessarily, yes, you have the GPA and the test scores, but can you have a conversation with another student in the dining hall? Can you have a conversation in a classroom? So I think it's really important that students and parents realize that it's more, you really have to plan ahead. And you have to think about, who do you want to be and who do you want to be perceived as, and becoming that person. And that's all personal branding, and it relates to your career, it relates to college, and it relates to who you're going to become as a person.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, because half the people that are listening to this say, "Oh yeah, my kid's driven and focused, and he kind of knows what he wants to be when he grows up, or she wants to be when she grows up." And the other half out there have that undecided kid who's floundering, and they're going, "Okay, well, how does this apply to us?" They, 1 minute they're vet, the next minute they're accounting, the next minute and they don't have a passion about any one of them in particular, and they're just not focused. And how do we use, again, kind of this personal branding in that situation where maybe you don't know where we're going, or what is that parent to do and that student to do?
I think what's important is not to stress over the final title, especially for a major. And what's more important is to identify the skill sets that particular student's strong in, and the things that they're interested in. Part of the soul searching process that my classmates and I did really identified this. And we were involved in a lot of different things. I've been in a variety of different industries. But what I noticed, unfortunately, later in my 20s, was that every industry that I was in, it used the same skill set, which is why I enjoyed it and why I got the job. And it was all project management, basically. It was having a deadline and working backwards to see where we needed to start and all the different components and pieces that came together. And I had no idea in high school that I was good at that. But at the same time, I was an equestrian rider. I did 3-day eventing. And from the age of 7 to 17, my goal was to be in the Olympics. And so I would go out and train with my horse every morning, every evening. When I would get ready for events, I would pack everything. I had a checklist. I knew every step I needed to take on a training schedule in order to get ready for a horse show, what I needed to take, all the requirements, the rules. And so I was doing project management. I just didn't realize I was doing project management. And every single activity I was involved in had that same skill set that I was building. And so with students that are undecided, there's a lot of stress to decide on a label. And that's what I think that they emphasize on the most, is that I have to have a label. I have to be able to tell other people that I'm going to be an accountant, or I'm going to be an engineer, or I'm going to be a veterinarian. Encourage your student to concentrate more on why they like the things that they like. And that might not be a well-rounded MBA answer right now, but if you ask a student why he enjoys playing video games, you might get a variety of different answers. You might get that they enjoy the storytelling aspect, or they enjoy working together on a team to beat the bad guys, or that it's part of a series, or that they're really good at this one technical thing, or they can do, I forgot what it is in Minecraft when you, modifications. They do modifications to the game, or they know where all of the cheats are, or those are all skills that you can relate, you can kind of broaden. It's just asking those questions. The same thing with students that are in band or sports. What particularly do you like about it? And they're not going to have an answer right off for you. But if you can plant the seed and get them to start thinking about it, the next couple months, they'll start thinking, well, why do I really like this? And once they draw their attention to it, they'll start identifying, well, I really like being with a team. And then the next question is, why do you like being with a team? Is it working together? Is it the fact that you're all going toward a common goal? Is it the community aspect? Is it that you're the team leader, or that you're backing up the team leader? So there's a lot of questions that you can start asking your student that will help them think about why they're in the activities they are in, why they like what they like, or maybe why they avoid certain activities. And if you can start there and start identifying those skills, then you can start plugging them into industries or introducing them to things to do. My favorite thing to say with students is, oh, well, you know you can do that for a living, right? Like, people get paid a lot of money to do that for a living. And then this light bulb goes off. They're like, really? I can do that? Because again, students think that there's maybe 10 or 15 careers out there, and that they have to have that label.
Right. Absolutely. So in your book, we've got part 1, putting yourself to work. Part 2, succeeding in school. Part 3 is success after college. And part 4 is having a particular skill set. So what I like about your book is it's very much kind of the long view of, and I think families should read this as they're starting their college process, and so that they can start thinking about the long view.
Mm-hmm.
And since you and I have read it, or I'm assuming you wrote it, maybe you haven't read it, but let's talk a little bit about, so the second step there was putting or succeeding in school.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different areas that you talk about there. I think if you read that section, it might change how you visit a school. So let's get down to what specifically should we be doing kind of tips for families that are getting involved in, and if they've got a senior right now, they've pretty much picked their school. But if they've got a junior right now, they're maybe visited half the schools they're interested in now, or maybe they're done with their visits, or maybe they're a little behind and they haven't started their visits. So how does what we learn in your book apply to the fact that I'm going to the local state college next week?
What I've seen on a lot of tours that I've been on, because I do visit a lot of schools, and that I've noticed when I ask students who have been on tours, is that, and this is how a tour is designed, is it's to give the school, it's a marketing view of the school, because a school is marketing itself to you. And so you're not going to it's an overview. You're not going to get into the nitty gritty. And you hear a lot about small class sizes. I don't think I've ever been to a school that doesn't talk about how small their class sizes are, that they have a study abroad program, that their food's really good, that their students go places and do great things. They talk about their sports teams and their rec centers and things like that, because those are a lot of the common questions that they receive from students and parents on tours. And it's what's in the brochure, and you kind of get this happy, peppy view of the school, which is great, especially if you've never visited. You really get a sense of the type of school. what a lot of people don't ask, which I think is the more pertinent questions, because you are spending a lot of money on these 4 years, are questions about the facilities, the opportunities, the centers that they have there at school that are going to help you beyond in the classroom. And some of those questions are also in the classroom. So, for example, a couple questions for, when they're talking about the engineering department, or they're talking about the science labs, or they're talking about this particular department or the library. Questions that students and parents should be thinking about are undergraduates allowed to work in the laboratories? How close are students with their professors? And usually your tour guide is a current student, and so you can ask them, do you feel close to your professors in your major? And they will give you an honest answer. Do you feel like you can approach your professor in office hours, or do you have a professional relationship with your professor? Do you feel like they have a lot of time for you? Questions like that will give you more information than small class sizes, because you could have a class size, a 15-to-1 ratio, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting to know your professor in class. Or maybe, you kind of see your professor once in a while, but the class is mostly taught by teaching assistants or by recent graduate students, etc.
Right.
So those are some in the classroom questions. However, what I would really like students and parents to focus on are the different centers and opportunities that the college offers beyond the academic. So, for example, I have never heard a student or a parent, other than myself, or not to brag on my students, but my students, because I've told them to ask this, ask about the alumni network at the school. And the alumni network is anybody who's ever gone to that school. The schools spend a lot of money and time catering to the alumni, not only for donations, but because once that I have a connection to my school, I would want to help out students that are at the school later, because I know as a graduate of Santa Clara what kind of student is at Santa Clara, what kind of employee I'm going to be getting. And so with the alumni network, you want to ask questions like, how many alumni and current student events are there? Do you try to pair up current students with alumni? Do you have job fairs with alumni companies, etc.? How extensive are your events? Do you is there a lot of students that go into companies where there are alumni? Do you do job shadowing or informational interviews? Are there opportunities for alumni and current students to mingle or talk? And that's a question that no one asks. It's very important, because that opens you up immediately. If you have a connection with somebody as alumni, that's a great networking tool for you. Oh,
Right.
we both went to this school. Can you give me any advice in your field? Especially since they're probably your same major and are 5, 10, 15 years ahead of you career-wise. That's a wealth of information that you can draw from as a student that a lot of students don't know they can draw from.
Another question that I think needs to be asked is, who recruits here? Again, if you're that engineering student that's saying, well, I want to get into the auto industry, and when you ask who recruits here and they say Ford, Chrysler, and Toyota, like, oh, that's pretty good. On the flip side, if they say, well, Boeing and, a bunch of aerospace companies, you'd be like, oh, well, that's not as good for my particular desires. But I think for a lot of families, delving that deep is well beyond what they've even thought they might want to or need to or could do.
Exactly. You'll get a lot of information about that school and that particular program. And that doesn't mean that it, if it is aerospace, that's necessarily wrong. But if that's not what you're looking for, the industry or the particular expertise you're looking to get into, maybe that's not the right fit program for you.
Right.
I know that UC Santa Cruz, for example, their game design department, they have a lot of the game design companies coming through, like Blizzard Entertainment, etc. And that's a big draw for them. But a lot of students don't know to ask that question. So ask who recruits here. Ask where where do current students go, or once they graduate, what are the companies that they go on to from this department? And that's something that if your tour guide doesn't know, the admissions officer might know. If they don't, they'll be able to find the answer for you. You
Right.
can also you can go onto LinkedIn too with LinkedIn University, and you can type in the university's name, and it'll tell you exactly the companies that alumni from that university who are on LinkedIn, the companies they work for, and the industries they go to. And so that's also a tool that you can use to do a little bit of research on your colleges if you can't go on the tour.
Yes, absolutely. I'll give you another example because I think this is an area that we can focus on. But I had a student that wanted to be a musician and he was very interested in jazz. So he had to spend a lot of time and research as he visited the various colleges because not only did he want to study trumpet, but he wanted to study jazz trumpet. And he was of the opinion, and I probably would agree with him, that he didn't want to try and learn jazz from a non-jazz musician. So he was trying to find who the instructors were in the, in the horn section and whether or not they were jazz musicians, if they were plugged into the jazz community. And that was a big deal for him. And that thought or that mentality, I think, could apply to just about anybody if you just sit down and just think about, well, what are the professors that I'm working with do? I mean, are they consulting on the side? I've got a friend who works in public administration, and he does a lot of consulting with municipalities. So if you're interested in government and you're going to at the municipality level, he would be a great professor to be associated with because he is in that industry. He could give you all kinds of benefits, but that's not going to be on the brochure for the college.
Not at all.
So there's all those kinds of ins and outs that if you spend the time, that can be help you make the final decisions of comparing schools and say, well, both of these schools have, similar class sizes, similar professors, similar costs, similar. But I really like this one because I discovered, again, the professors in this, are involved in this industry. They consult for this industry. If you go to our local state school, our flagship school is very known for the stem cell research, and there's a lot of that kind of activity in their sciences. Some of the top researchers, that top research is happening at University of Wisconsin. And I don't know what the top research is at your flagship university out in California. There's many of them, I'm sure, but
Right.
that's, again, if you know that that's your end in mind, that may have a sway as far as which school you study biology at or accounting or whatever it might be.
Right. And I think too that for seniors right now who are making the decision on what school they want to go to, that can help you rationalize, is this school worth the extra $2,000 a year or $3,000 a year? If you get down to, your two choices or three choices.
Right. And then as a parent, if you can get your student to say this one's worth it because of the alumni work, then me as a parent saying, well, if I'm going to pay the extra money, how are you going to take advantage of that alumni network? Just because they have it, that's not going to make a difference. What are you going to do and make them articulate, oh, well, then I guess I'm going to have to get involved in the alumni network in order for it to make worthwhile to pay for the alumni network.
Right. And that, like, I'm going to have to go to the events and maybe I'll get a job at the alumni house. And I think that's important to mention as well, is that your school could have these amazing opportunities, but if you're not taking advantage of them, they're not going to do you any good. I have a whole story in the book where I have a chapter on the alumni network at your school. And I tell the story of how I went to an alumni event. I had no idea what I was doing there. And I kind of embarrassed myself a little bit because somebody asked me, well, what do you want to do when you get out of college? And I had no idea what to tell them. Where that could have been a perfect opportunity for me to, say something like, I'm really not quite sure yet. Did you feel the same when you were in college? Can you give me any pointers? Or planning a little bit more ahead and having things like business cards to give to people, or to ask them to coffee, to talk to them a little bit longer and to build my professional network. I'd love to talk more about this. And so I think that that's really important too, is to ask these questions about these different aspects of that college, but then weigh whether or not your student's actually going to take advantage of them.
Right.
Um,
And then LinkedIn, before we get off that topic, LinkedIn is another great tool. So ask them if you mind if you connect on LinkedIn,
exactly.
and then immediately follow up before that permission fades in their memory. But if they get a LinkedIn connection request within 12 hours of them talking to you, they'll almost always click yes, and then you can, again, and we've got a whole episode. I talked to a LinkedIn expert. You can use that to your advantage too, with using the newer social media as well.
I'm sure that you guys covered this in the LinkedIn episode, but it's a representation of your brand online. And so if I go as an employer or an alumni member to Google you and your LinkedIn profile comes up and you have this really great professional picture and your profile's all filled out and you've requested me to connect with you, that says a lot about you as a student, that you're prepared. I can see your brand there. It's going to get you really far. And so that's a great tool for students. And it's a great research tool, as I mentioned as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then kind of the next level too is, as you're posting, if you I guess I would recommend that you kind of sequester LinkedIn to be more of a professional. So you're not going to
Yes.
put pictures of your party out there. You're going to
Nope.
put pictures of you standing in front of your presentation when you presented at a conference or something.
Exactly.
And then that opportunity, then if you're actually connected with your alumni, then your alumni will see that occasionally, that, oh yeah, that's that kid I talked to 2 years ago. I bet he's about ready to graduate. No, look, and every once in a while they see a picture go by or a post go by where this is a research I did, or this is an internship I did, or this is whatever. And it'd be like sometime in the future that when you contact that person and say, hey, are there any openings? They can potentially remember who you are, or very quickly, look you up and then remember who you are. And they might say, yeah, we're hiring, or I know somebody that's hiring, or whatever it is. Then you can kind of go back to that relationship.
That's exactly right. And I found that it's also easier to keep connected if you're following that person's company, because company news comes across that news feed and you can ask them questions or congratulate them, or, hey, I just read about you in the Chronicle or the New York Times, congratulations, or the local paper. So that's a great way that you can kind of keep on their radar as well. Is, oh, you guys came out with this new product. I'm excited to try it out. Congratulations. So LinkedIn's a great tool for students.
Absolutely. And I'm still learning it. Obviously that wasn't around when we're dealing with it again. So that's another point for parents, is students today are going to be doing it differently than the way parents did it 20, 30 years ago.
I think that leads into another area where I think parents and students should be asking about on these tours is the Career Center and how active their Career Center is. Because the Career Center is going to help you, a robust one is going to help you with your resumes, your cover letters. They're going to have industry-specific job fairs. They're going to have classes for LinkedIn, for social media, building your profile online. If you're an artist or in video or in some of, even in business or some majors that will require it, having your own website is fantastic, because you can put your profile or you can start blogging about the expertise that you're developing or what you're learning. And that's also going to give employers and graduate schools, et cetera, access to who you are as a person, and it's going to help you stand out from other students. And so looking at the Career Center and how active and involved they are with students, understanding at the same time that that's another resource that if you're not taking advantage of it, it's not going to do a lot of good. But asking questions like, how many career counselors do you have here on campus? Do you offer assessments for students to help them figure out more about themselves and what path is best for them? Do you have workshops? Do you have guest speakers? Do you have job fairs and industry specific? Do you help match students with internships? Questions like that about the Career Center are questions that nobody usually asks on tours, but that's also a resource that you're paying for. And so take full advantage of that and ask as many questions as you can about the Career Center services that they offer.
Right. Absolutely. And another quick hint for parents and students out there, if you haven't done the research yet, go look and see if yourname.com is available.
Yes.
And if it is, grab it. You may never use it, but it's very frustrating when you want it and you can't have it.
Exactly. And even if it's $25 a month, or not a month, a year to buy, just buy it. There are a lot of different platforms to help you build a website that's drag and drop. It's really easy. There's Weebly, Squarespace. There's like a million of them now.
Right.
And building your website, I have students that have their own websites. They built it during a meeting. It took them 20 minutes. And so if you could have your name as a website, do it. And then set up an email that's your name at yourname.com. So kat@katclowes.com. That's great. That's something you put on your business card, and then that's always yours. And it makes you stand out. Yes, an edu address is great as well. But if I'm networking with you and you give me your card and it has your name at yourname.com, that already tells me, well, A, that you have a business card, so you're already on top of it. But B, that you're thinking ahead. Even if you're not really quite sure what you're going to do, that's going to impress me, because it means that you're serious, that you're planning for the future, that you're taking those steps. And that, again, is part of your brand. It's telling me that you're prepared, that you're planning ahead, that you're active, you're doing things for your future. And if you're doing things for your future, you're probably a really hard worker, and you're going to be a person that's going to do things for my company.
Right.
And so that's really important.
You know, that's something I've done for my children, and I guess I'm a little frustrated because one of them wasn't available as exactly the way I wanted it, so I had to take an alternative. But yeah, well, I think we've pretty much used up our time today, but we will talk again, I believe. So if people want to learn more about you again, can we talk about where we find the book and where your websites are and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So the book is available on Amazon and at all major booksellers. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, etc. It's Put College to Work. And you can also buy it through my website at mymarchconsulting.com, or I also have my name, so katclowes.com as my personal site. You can follow me on Twitter at College March. Pick up the book. It's a great gift for your senior. It's a great gift for your current college student, and it's a great handbook if you're looking for, you're starting to get into the college process, or even if you have a senior who's graduating college that has no idea what they should be doing. It's a great resource for them.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. All right. That was a great interview. Kat and I talked about LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn episode that I referred to is episode number 25 with Niall Nickel. You can go back there and learn about how to use LinkedIn as a high school and college student to build your network and leverage your professional success and help you with your first job. So again, that's episode number 25. Again, as always, show notes are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege/78. And if you're interested, we have a great free resource out there, the Parent's Guide to Scholarships, and that is available at tamingthehighcostofcollege/scholarships. So that guide is 4 videos. If you go there and sign up, those videos help families understand how scholarships work, where to find them, and if you should spend your time to pursue them, or if scholarships is the right path for you. There's a lot of misinformation about scholarships, so we've got a quick tutorial there. It's roughly 4 12-minute episodes. By the time you watch those episodes, you'll understand enough about scholarships to make an informed decision as to whether or not you should pursue scholarships or write them off and spend your time in other areas. Again, that's tamingthehighcostofcollege/scholarships. That's all we have for today. I appreciate you coming out and spending time with us, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.